Welcome to Practical Talk Time. I'm your host, Usha Kumar. The election day is fast approaching, and I'm sure you've all figured out who you're going to be voting for. And there are some positions for which we really aren't very clear as to who we are going to vote for. And so I have here with me a Connecticut Green Party candidate, Ed Heflin, who's here with us. And he's running for the state senate from District 36, which is Greenwich and I think a part of Stamford, I believe. So please join me in welcoming Ed Heflin. Ed, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Usha. It's great to be back on with you again. I know in the past we've discussed public banking, and as it turns out, I've taken that topic to the state with me. Actually, I'm running on a state platform. Again, this is for District 36 in the state of Connecticut, which includes, as you point out, Greenwich. It includes part of Stamford and also part of New Canaan.
I see.
As a matter of fact, I do have kind of a little map here describing some of the areas. You kind of see Greenwich over here, okay. New Canaan on top, and part of Stamford there. So that's District 36 for which I'm running. I live in Greenwich, and I'm excited about this term's election because it's a two-way race, as it turns out. I'm running against the present incumbent, a gentleman by the name of L. Scott France, who is a three-term Republican incumbent. This time around, I'm running as a Green candidate. The Democrats decided not to run a candidate against L. Scott. The Greens have decided to, and to try to bring to the public's awareness and to the voters' awareness the very critical fiscal situation of Connecticut, and hence my public banking platform. Now, you and I have known each other, and you have known about
yes.
public banking, my advocacy for public banking.
Yeah, you've been on our show several times.
That's correct.
Trying to educate our audience about what public banking is.
Absolutely correct. And I really believe that the general voter and just the general person, if they knew something about public banking, they would probably scratch their head and say, well, why didn't we think about that, 6 years ago, let's say during the 2008 and 2009 financial crisis? Why hadn't we thought about it at that point? And I've been advocating ever since the financial crisis of 2008 and 9. Actually, I got on board a little bit later, having the topic raised to me through the efforts of Ellen Brown and some of our constituents in public banking with the Public Banking Institute out of California originally, which is nationwide at this point.
And I think even last time we did touch upon some of the policies of the Green Party itself.
That's
so as
correct.
a candidate, what are the things you're going to address? But mainly I want to know, why did you decide to run?
Why did I decide to run? That's a great question. Now, you know, my background is both professionally and academically. It's fairly complete. I won't go over my entire educational background, but I come from a fairly strong scientific background. I do have a PhD in physics. As well as business, I have 15 plus odd years consulting experience in financial services with Wall Street firms. If you were to name the firm, I've probably been there for one or more consulting engagements. So I know very intimately how Wall Street works, and specifically how the valuations, modeling, and risk management of Wall Street work.
And all of these translate to the individual person's financial health, right? Basically,
yes.
And a lot of people are not aware of that, how the economy of the local area and the financial policies of the local area can affect their own financial
Absolutely
standing.
correct. What you're, I think, getting at, Usha, is one of the keystones to a public banking platform, which is it's really about the benefit to those in the communities, so those businesses, those individuals, those students who are taking out student loans for universities in Connecticut, that they benefit from a bank, a public bank. And here I'm talking about a Connecticut state bank. And I always hearken back to the Bank of North Dakota as sort of the poster child, which has been an incredible success story here in the United States. As an example, the state bank, the Bank of North Dakota, has given back to its citizens almost $500 million, $440 million over the last decade alone. And it's my opinion that we can expect those sorts of results here in Connecticut. But in addition to that, of course, you're indicating that the benefits of public banking at the level of a state bank are first and foremost to those citizens of the state,
I see.
as opposed to Wall Street. And here, if you were to go to my website, for example, my candidacy website, you'll find that either on the Green Party, if you went to ctgreenparty.org, and then look down at the candidate list, you'll see my link included in that candidate list, so you can take a look at what my simple one-page candidacy page summary statement looks like. Very simple. There are basically two charts that indicate everything you need to know in a macroscopic way about public banking. And in fact, I'll go ahead and I'll cover those here really quickly before I get into other aspects of my campaign. And again, my campaign is centered on public banking, a Connecticut state bank, and what I've dubbed as the 4 E's. And I'll cover those a little later, but those 4 E's stand for the economy, education, energy, and the environment. So this is the present banking system that we have now. I don't know if they can zoom in on that.
This is the camera.
But here the notion is that at the very center of that chart and diagram that explains the flow chart of money and the banking, the paradigm of the banking, you have essentially Wall Street. So all the money that our Treasury accepts and collects, all of the money for the state of Connecticut goes through as sort of point of distribution and control is our Treasury. So that's the Treasurer's office with Denise Napier and some of the other associates, her subordinates and workers there in the Treasurer's office.
And this is on your website?
This is on the website.
Okay.
This you'll see is there are two charts, just two charts. It's real simple. You'll see my photo. You'll see a description about what my platform is all about summarized in one paragraph. You'll see a one-paragraph description about me, some of my experience and my professional expertise to be able to deliver to the citizens of the state of Connecticut, the results that I'm talking about here. Now I'll just talk about what it is in a macroscopic way, and then I'll talk about the benefits that the people in the state of Connecticut will derive from a change in the paradigm of banking. And it's not necessarily a change in what we're doing right now, but it's a supplement. It's a way to say what we're doing now, while it addresses certain issues, it may not address everything that we're looking to do. For example, extension of credit, either to existing or new businesses, the growing of jobs, the creation of jobs. And let me point out, we have a very sore need to grow jobs here in Connecticut. For example, in 2012, I think we gained somewhere in the order of 12,000 rough odd jobs. This last year,
we're really lagging behind other states.
We, in fact, are lagging behind Vermont, and that was precisely my point here. We're lagging behind states like New York, New Hampshire, Vermont, which have all, since the crisis of 2008 that I referred to, have all come back to basically where they were pre what they call the long recession. And depending on who you talk to.
Depression for those who are
depression or recession.
Unemployed for a long time.
I guess the official name is the long recession. So from 2012 to 2013, we only gained about 5,500 jobs. So that's less than even half of what we did in 2012. 2014 is not looking like a banner year for us either. So we really need to do something in terms of changing or augmenting the banking paradigm. And that's what I'm suggesting. That's the first E
and what are
in
you
the
finding?
4 E's that I'm attempting to address with my platform.
As far as your opponent is concerned, in your district itself, what is happening there? What is positive or what is not positive that you want to change?
What is good or what is not so good? That's a good question. I would have to talk a little bit about the present incumbent and what he's done for the people in terms of his voting, for the people of the District 36. Let me just, and I'll address that if you will in just a second. Let me just show the audience, your viewers, the juxtaposition, and here it's going to be very easy and readily understood what the difference is between the present banking paradigm that we have now, which is up here, where Wall Street is at the center, And then the future system that I intend to implement from day one, I intend to implement legislation that would create and implement a Connecticut state bank. So that now we have sort of as our central bank for the treasurer's action and activity, as well as comptroller, et cetera, a bank, the state bank of the state of Connecticut. And you'll notice that instead of, for example, Wall Street sending its money to, or distributing its money
internationally or to other states.
Questionable sort of investment instruments or vehicles like derivatives or currency speculation, foreign exchange swaps, this sort of thing, or in the stock market. Some people are considering the high evaluations of the stock market to be well overpriced and well overbought at this point. You know, is that something we want to continue on to continue to do? Or might we consider diversifying? Perhaps even slightly modifying the paradigm that we have for banking. By the way, this paradigm for banking versus having a Connecticut state bank at the center where we can decide where those funds are going to go. And we can be absolutely sure that those funds will go to benefit businesses and the citizens in the state of Connecticut.
Yeah.
Do you think we have any oversight? Do you think we have any say when Wall Street goes and buys certain types of derivatives, maybe currency swaps, maybe even puts money in foreign banks, in Spain, for example? If you were to look at the Treasurer's quarterly reports, you'll find that we are, in fact, investing internationally in not only emerging markets, but actually directly in foreign banks in Spain.
Or in other states within the
In other states as well, too.
And not really going to Connecticut.
How can we be sure any of that benefits us? The only thing we know we get back from Wall Street is less than 1%. And that's the shocking thing that most people, most citizens in the state of Connecticut, or any state actually for that matter, do not understand is going on right now. And let me show you a graph of what that looks like. So our return, so we spend roughly $4.5 billion in short-term investments to Wall Street. And what do we get back for that? Well, the good news is, I guess the best news that you could say is that, well, we do get that $4.5 billion back over time. But let me show you this graph here. This graph indicates, and notice the scale over here, it's less than 1%. Down here you have 0, here you have 0.1, 0.1%. We're getting on average 0.16% return on our short-term investment funds, our STIF accounts. Literally, we are getting stiffed, if you ask me. What I'm proposing, though, with our public banking in the state of Connecticut is through the use of fractional reserve banking, we're able to get not 0.1%, not 1%. We're able to leverage using conservative, completely legal fractional reserve banking. Every investment bank does it. Every savings and loan does it. Every credit union does it. Every local bank does it. We're able to get 10 times, or instead of less than 1% or 0.16%, for example, on our STIF account, 1,000% or more.
Yeah, I'm glad you're bringing this to our point, because I'm just wondering, most people may not be aware of this.
Most people are not aware of this at all.
And it's not addressed in the main media.
Fundamental idea is, look, if we set up a bank that can take advantage and can leverage locally to our own communities. That's, by the way, perhaps an even more important benefit, is that it locally benefits us. It locally benefits the state of Connecticut. We can be absolutely sure when we dispense those funds for loans, when we extend that credit for businesses, building businesses, when we extend that credit to students to get loans at preferential rates, or do things like contribution, do things like a participation in loans, maybe participation with the federal government, who is the major loan source for most students. If we were to participate, there is a strong possibility we could, number one, either increase the amounts available to them, but more importantly, reduce the interest rates that they would have to pay, potentially.
And what are the pictures here?
And the pictures here kind of indicate those benefits. That extending credit, extending loan, what is it going to do? Well, sorry, my stack of papers is just about falling. Getting a little excited about the topic. What is that going to do? Well, it's going to create infrastructure locally for us, and we can be absolutely sure of that. We would be able to oversee We would be able to oversee the rebuilding of communities, for example. We would have specialized infrastructure projects that we can invest directly in, either private infrastructure projects or public infrastructure projects. We would have businesses that are headquartered in the state of Connecticut, that are building plants in the state of Connecticut. We would have new businesses, high-tech businesses, for example, through the use of high-tech accelerators or incubators. That might allow startup companies to begin to get seed funding, then angel funding, and then of course Series A or B venture capital, that sort of thing. That ultimately the State Bank of Connecticut would be able to allocate certain funds through the creation of certain types of funds, be able to allocate specifically for those types of businesses or for those types of infrastructure projects.
Yeah, I have a simple, quick question for you. How much reception do you find, or do you think you will have at the state level for this?
I think the reception, it's my opinion that the topic of a state bank in the state of Connecticut has been kind of glossed over. And I will say that with some amount of certainty, because there was a committee that was set up, I believe it was in, if I'm not mistaken, in 2012, that did a study. And that study was something of in my opinion, a cursory study that made use of certain documents and didn't make use of all the available documentation. And basically, more or less was tepid to the idea of a public bank. In 2012, they didn't exactly kill the idea, but legislation wasn't proposed as a result of that committee's work to go ahead and propose a state bank for the state of Connecticut.
So a new committee would have to be set up again to revisit these points. And
as far as I'm concerned, I would suggest simply forwarding legislation. And then at that point in time, if they feel a committee is necessary to discuss the legislation at that point, so a draft of legislation, if they would feel it's necessary, I would be open to a committee. However, I would also advise that legislation be proposed already ahead of a committee that would actually outline what a law would look like and what that state bank would look like. Again, I'm specifically talking about a bank of banks. So this isn't necessarily a retail bank that you or I would walk into, as we might, for example, our local branch of a bank nowadays, make a deposit, have our passbook or our checkbook indicate or reflect that deposit on it, et cetera. This would be a bank of banks that would work with then other banks. So it would be seamless in its implementation.
Yeah, I'm going to have our audience, look at our archives and watch the show that we did extensively on public banking, because we only have 10 minutes to cover all of your other points.
Fair enough.
So
well, let me not race through too much of the other topics, because they are equally as important. Some of those topics, so in addition to, of course, the public banking that I am essentially cornerstoning my platform with, I intend to address, obviously, the first of the 4 E's, and that's the economy itself. Some of the most important topics, as far as the Office of Legislative Research has identified for 2014 and beyond, some of the most important topics do include things like appropriations and banking and that sort of thing. In the area of appropriations, I could go over, and here's where I might introduce what has been done so far by the present incumbent. And I won't reflect too much on that, but L. Scott France, against whom I'm running, who is a Republican incumbent, who is seeking a 4th term on, I guess, a platform that he is well entrenched in Hartford, and as I understand it, on 4 different committees, and a ranking member, if I'm not mistaken, on bonding and the and finance and banking committee.
So you're trying to bring something different.
Precisely. Yes. The question begs itself if he is a ranking member on certain important committees.
And we haven't done anything important for us.
Well, let me tell you what he's done. And you could look at his track record for particular voting in SB 1239, if I'm not mistaken. He voted for tax increases. I am not for tax increases. I am a proponent of retaining taxes at the level they're at and potentially decreasing them. How would I do that? Through an implementation, as I say, of public banking in the state of Connecticut, where we're beginning to leverage the money that's entrusted to the state from the people through taxes, through revenues and other fees that the state accumulates.
Do you think that can bring the state back to the surplus position that we once were?
Absolutely. And the evidence is clear when you look at the Bank of North Dakota, how over the last 10 years, it has returned back to the people almost $500 million. And as I said at the onset of our program, it's my belief that we would be able to do something very similar. If you look at the OLR, the Office of Legislative Research Predictions, and the OFA, the Office of Financial Analysis, they've indicated that over the next 4 years, almost as far as the eye can see, we are looking at budget deficits in excess of $1 billion. Maybe not this year in 2014.
For Connecticut?
For Connecticut.
Okay.
I think we're just at about break even for 2014. But things begin to really break from there. In 2016, 17, and 18, each and every one of those years, we run a budget deficit in excess each of those years
That's an
of
estimation?
$1 billion. That's correct. That is an estimation. Obviously, no one has a time machine to be able to go back to the future. So that's the estimate is $1.1 billion, if I'm not mistaken, for fiscal 2016. 2017 looks worse, $1.23 billion. And 2018 looks even worse, $2.34 or $5 billion, if I'm not mistaken. What's worse? The pensions that we have. So if we look at the pension situation, I know many of those who are older, many of the baby boomers in Greenwich, New Canaan, they're worried about their pensions, especially those that have worked with the state. I can't speak so much to the private pensions, but I can speak about the state pensions. The outlook is terrible. We have almost 65 now billion, I'm sorry, with a B, $billion. And I hate to smile at this, but
we only have
$1 billion,
5 minutes.
I'll try to wrap up as I'm talking about finishing up on economy here. $1 billion in unfunded liabilities. Unfunded. We don't have funds for this. What we have, if you were to look at the funding allocated right now, we've got about $25 billion presently that are spread through, I think, 6 or 7 different trust accounts and about 9 or 10 other, 9 or 10 trust accounts and 6 or 7 pension funds. Those include everything from judges' pension funds to firemen's to et cetera, municipal pension funds, et cetera. Those are what have unfunded liabilities, which are growing at a rate that looks to be greater than inflation of presently $65 billion. We don't know where to get that. And if you were going to try
we need to really work on the finance and the economics of this place.
Absolutely correct. So that's number one. And for those who are a little bit, some of the older folks in the audience, that's something I intend to address through a public banking platform to be able to augment, at the very least, augment the present banking paradigm where we have Wall Street. I'm not suggesting get rid of it completely. All I'm suggesting is, wouldn't it be great to have a supplemental system that allowed us to make sure that we can, number one, use leverage as any investment bank might do and that sort of thing, to be able to better steward, guide, invest our monies, the monies for the state of Connecticut, in the borders of the state of Connecticut. Number two, on the 4E's platform that I intend to address, is education. Now, the major issues for 2014 involve education. Some of those have longer-term goals. For example, 2 important longer-term goals for the state of Connecticut that I advocate for are trying to reduce the gap. Trying to reduce the gap between the, let's say, minority student. Here I'm talking from elementary school to high school in the state of Connecticut. Try to reduce that gap, the educational gap, for the minority student versus the majority student. This might be, for example, for the Latino or the socially disadvantaged or disenfranchised to the more well-to-do. Even though typically, and in Greenwich I could tell you there are many people who put their children in private schools. And that's great. I'm an advocate for private schooling. I believe it actually for my kids as well. But as well, I don't think that we should let slip public school, especially on this account, this future. And the next, of course, is to be able to offer more certification, more diplomas. Not everyone might.
We only have less than 2 minutes.
I'll try to quickly wrap up with education here. Not everyone, may be slated for, let's say, an advanced degree, a PhD, but certainly everyone should be able to get some sort of an advanced technical degree, an advanced technical certification. The computer age is upon us. Like it or not, we have an incredible, almost insatiable need for those who are able to work with computers, computer engineers, computer scientists, etc.
Yeah, I think we need to train more people on the latest technology here. What's your third E?
So the third topic
third and
is,
the fourth.
Right, the third and fourth I kind of wrap together. And they go almost hand in glove here. And those two include energy. The environment and energy. And here with environment, I think many of the programs that the DEEP, the Department of Environment and Energy and Environmental Protection,
we have less than
have set up and are implementing, I'm a proponent for. As a Green Party member, I'm a very strong, staunch constituent of green conservation, being able to walk in beautiful parks, being able to have money dedicated to the preservation and the maintenance for public benefit.
A very quick question.
Yes.
The Green Party itself, I don't even have time for that question. Because I had a friend saying that, Green Party, they're communists. And so I said, what makes them communists? What do you think? And they said, it's because of the socialist views. And so I said, socialism is different from communism. Anyway, now we are out of time. Thank you very much, Ed, for coming on the show. I hope people can decide now who they want, and they should for voting.
Go to my website, www.egheflin.com /info.html.
Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show. Have a great election. Bye.
Thank you.